Okay, the latest Devstream was one of the most dense and detail-packed updates we've seen from Intrepid so far. Not just a teaser, not just a visual showcase. This one was systems focused from top to bottom. From major overhauls to crafting node progression, guild mechanics, and PvP risk structures, it's clear Intrepid is gearing up for something big. And they should be, because Alpha 3 is coming. And the July PTR is our first real look at how all of this plays out in motion, even if it's under visual NDA. But let's be honest, it was a lot. The 2.5-hour stream was fast, info-heavy, and packed with terminology that only makes sense if you've been following the project like it's your job, or worse, like you've never left your mom's basement. So, to help make sense of all of it, I'll be breaking the Devstream down into focused, easy-to-digest chunks of what's changing, how it works, and what it actually means for testing and Alpha 3. And we're kicking things off with PvP. Because this isn't just a few tweaks, this is a full rewrite of how conflict works in Ashes of Creation. Flagging, corruption, griefing protections, lawless zones, and everything players have been complaining about since Alpha began is finally being addressed. And on paper, it looks genuinely promising. But that's the key. It's on paper. Because all of this only works if Intrepid sticks the landing. So let's break down every PvP system change they revealed, and what has to go right for them to actually matter in-game. One of the biggest changes revealed in the Devstream is the addition of lawless zones. Dynamically changing lawless zones. And for once, Intrepid isn't just adding risk, they're giving it context. These are temporary PvP hotspots that rotate across the world on a set schedule, like the Highwayman Zone. When a zone enters its lawless state, it triggers a spin-up timer, giving everyone nearby a heads up. Once it activates, everyone inside is automatically flagged as a combatant, whether you like it or not. And that's the point. This isn't random ganking. It's organized chaos, a timed window where high-value spawns, rare drops, and open conflict all collide in one area. And you enter it knowing exactly what you're signing up for. This solves one of Ash's oldest problems, aimless open-world PvP. In Alpha 1, half of the fights were grief-driven, and the other half were people trying to avoid corruption. Lawless zones flip that dynamic. They're inviting you into conflict, but only when you think the stakes are worth it. It also creates a natural hotspot for guild wars, bounty hunters, and opportunistic loot goblins like myself. You know when and where the action is happening, and what kind of risk you're walking into. And the best part, if you're outside the zone, you're safe. No weird AoE baiting, no flagging games, no confusion. Just one rule. If you step inside, you're fair game. Of course, this system lives or dies on implementation and player behavior. The timers need to be clear, the loot has to be worth it, and the fights need to feel rewarding. Not like you're just feeding someone else's highlight reel. But as a foundation, this is one of the smartest PvP changes Intrepid has made so far. Next up is a change that's less flashy but way more important. The flagging system finally makes sense. If you played in Alpha 1, you probably remember trying to defend yourself against an attack from a player and wondering why nothing was happening, why none of your moves were going off. Or maybe you hit Alt to force attack someone and accidentally flagged yourself mid-combat. Those were fun times. Well, that system is gone. The force attack toggle has been removed and the whole flagging structure has been rebuilt around intentional combat. Now, if a player is flagged as a combatant or corrupt, you can just attack them. No modifier keys, no fidgeting with your input settings. If they're red or purple, they're fair game. Simple. Non-combatants, those players with the white names, still require a manual action to attack. And that's exactly how it should be. You don't want a stray attack turning your farming trip into a corruption sentence. And for players who want more control, there are some new settings to adjust how force attacks work, like changing whether it's hold or toggle. The idea is to make the system clear and responsive without giving players a way to opt out of PvP responsibility entirely. That clarity extends to crowd control too. If you're not flagged, you're now immune to all forms of CC. Roots, stuns, slows, knockdowns, everything. No more AoE baiting. No more locking someone in place until they slip up and retaliate. If you're white named, you can't be CC'd until you decide to fight back. It draws a hard line. You're either participating in PvP or you're not. And for once, there's no gray area to exploit. What the devs didn't mention was how this affects gatherers. It sounds like players sleeping or stunning someone on a resource node to steal it from them will no longer be a thing. If one player wants the node, they may have to kill the other player outright and enjoy the corrupted status that comes with it. But that's only if this works the way it sounds like it does. Of course, that assumes the immunity works the way it's supposed to as well. Ashes has enough conditional effects and passive interactions to fill a spreadsheet, and if there's a loophole, someone will find it. But if Intrepid gets this part right, it might be the most effective grief protection they've ever implemented. The corruption system itself didn't get new mechanics this time. It got teeth. According to the devs, corruption values are being heavily overtuned going into the July PTR, especially when it comes to killing lower level players. If you go red by ganking someone weaker than you, you're going to feel it. And that's not a theory, that's by design. This isn't a balance pass, it's a behavioral filter. Intrepid said outright that these changes are meant to keep griefing under control during testing so they can collect cleaner data. That means harsher penalties, faster corruption gains, and way less room for misusing the system under the guise of testing PvP. This also gives us a clearer look at what corruption is actually for. It's not a PvP playstyle, and it's not an open-ended gank pass. It's a punishment system, and it always has been. The question now is whether they keep that clarity once Alpha 3 begins. These overtuned values are temporary, but if the system proves effective at shutting down bad behavior without discouraging fair fights, it'll be hard to argue against keeping some of that sting. If all goes well, these overtuned values will loosen up once the testing phase ends, because the goal isn't to scare people away from PvP, it's to clean up the worst behavior before launch. And hopefully, by the time launch rolls around, Intrepid will have dialed in a version of the system that actually works, one that punishes bad actors without punishing good fights, and makes PvP something every player can engage with, and not just survive. Now, Ashes has always had a problem with what I'll politely call creative mob usage. You've probably seen it. A player runs into a mob pack and leads them straight into someone else or a party, then watches from the sidelines while the game does the griefing for them. That's been a thing since Alpha 1, but it's finally being addressed. The devs are updating the mob aggro logic so that enemies won't switch targets unless they're taking significantly more threat from another player or party. In plain English, if someone tries to train a pack of mobs onto your party, the system now makes it much harder for you to accidentally pull aggro from that person. The mobs will stick to the original attacker unless you massively out-threat them, meaning your group won't get punished for just defending themselves or healing through the train. This should shut down most forms of mob training abuse, especially the kind where players or would-be gankers try to get creative with leashing mechanics or environmental bait in order to take the zone or simply harass other players grinding their own business. Now, will this stop all forms of PvE griefing? Of course not. But it's a clear sign that Intrepid is finally tightening the screws on edge case behavior and putting their words into action. It's not a headline feature, but it's one of those quiet back-end fixes that make the whole game feel less exploitable and a lot more fair. So that's the full rundown, unless I missed something, on the Ashes of Creation's PvP system plans. Lawless zones, better flagging, crowd control clarity, corruption with teeth, and finally an answer to mob train griefing. Most of these changes are not flashy. They're not headline features, but they are the kind of foundational fixes that make or break how PvP feels, especially in a game where risk and reward are supposed to matter. Wasn't there some content creator talking about how important the foundation of the game was or something? Anyway, while a lot of this still hinges on execution, The direction is solid with much needed clarity. Intrepid isn't just saying the right things, they're building systems that might actually deliver on those promises. Next up in the series, we're heading into the economy. Physical crates, trade routes, smuggling, saturation mechanics, and how player movement is about to shape the entire in-game market. So if you're enjoying the breakdown and you don't want to dig through the 2.5-hour stream for answers, stick around. We're only getting started. That's all for today. You're welcome.